Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the coach pad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your coach pad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the offense coordinator and O-line coach at Sharyland Pioneer High School, Coach David Duty. Coach, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we talked a little bit before we got started, and like I said, we have some mutual friends, and um, kind of just to get started. I mean, how did you end up as the at Sharyland Pioneer?
Well, the head coach there and I um, were both in our early days. He worked for another guy that was a wing T, base wing T guy, and I worked also I coached the wing T for 11 years, two at Hidalgo and nine at PSJ Memorial, and he grew up with wing T as his base, and I kind of went the wing T base. We coached against each other many times when he was at Edinburgh High, and I was at PSJ Memorial and even at PSJ North when I worked for Bruce Bush, and so we've known each other. And his offensive coordinator uh, retired, and him and I had been talking for a couple of years about hooking up together, and so whenever I left Brownsville Veterans, I was, looking to move back home. Me and my son were living in a trailer. I went to go work for Kelly Lee there at Brownsville Veterans, and when I was, me and my wife made up our mind we were not going to live apart anymore because it was hard for us. I was living in a trailer during the week and then driving back home, and that was too much for us to be for her being away from her son because my son was there with me as well. And so we decided to move back together. And so whenever Brownsville wasn't an option anymore, we moved back here, and I was looking for a job. And luckily, Eddie Galindo there at Pioneer hired me, and so it's been a good match with us. We went 10-3 this year, and we were the co-district champs, and we're the number one seed, and won a playoff game, lost in the second round to a pretty good football team, but yeah, it's been interesting going back to the spread. I'd coached it before when I was a head coach. We ran the spread, and whenever I was worked for a guy there at PSG North his 1 year, and then uh, so then I was back with there at we're running the spread in Hidalgo, and then when I left there, I came to PSG Southwest, and we ran the spread the first year there, and then we couldn't win. I mean, it was a school that we couldn't win, so we went into the Flexbone, and then I went with Kelly Lee there at Flexbone, and then when I came back home, Coach Eddie Galindo hired me there at Pioneer, and I had a good time coaching it this year. You do a lot more pass protection stuff than I had doing with the Flexbone, and that's been fun. I learned my pass protection, believe it or not, from guys that are pretty well known in the spread world. Is Jerry Bird? He was offensive coordinator there at Lake Travis the very first time they won a state championship. He was working for Jeff Dykes, and he was his offensive coordinator there at Lake Travis. Well, I learned that from him. When we got hired at PSA Memorial, I came with a head coach from Hidalgo, went over there, and we kind of meshed our two situations together. His passing game with our run game, and so I learned a lot of pass protection from him and Walter Patterson, and we kind of came up with a blitz drill, and where we chart out the blitzes that everybody runs, and we spend about 3 to 4 periods a day, Monday and Tuesday, just picking up blitzes, and so that was fun to go back to my world of breaking down the blitzes and picking that stuff up, because in the wing tee world, you don't spend as much, and in the Flexbone you don't spend as much time with the pass protection, but that's been fun going back into doing my blitz drill, and that's been fun. I like playing around with every people, what blitzes they run at you, and trying to pick them up and trying to make it a little harder. So it's been fun. Been there with Coach Galindo there with Pioneer.
Now, how much have you taken from? I mean, you've obviously spent the past 5 years in the Flexbone world, um, learn it from a variety of people, including Kelly Lee, spending some time talking to the Harding guys. Um, how has that altered, or have you brought anything with you from that to your spread? What you're doing now, spread wise?
Yeah, yeah. Kelly Lee. I mean, one of the smartest football coaches. I've worked for a guy that is a Texas high school Hall of Famer, Bruce Bush, and Kelly Lee is a sharp cookie, man. I know you've had him on the cast. I've watched him on your podcast before, and whenever you can steal from smart, because I'm damn near stupid. I'll tell everybody in the world. I'm not stupid, but I live in the same neighborhood. Okay, I've got a house that we pay the same taxes, and being stupid. So I steal a lot, and I stole a lot of things from him, and a lot of it was attitude. A lot of things that I stole from him was his one that made a lot of stick to me, and my head coach loved it too, and we've adopted it. His one of his pillars is finish, and one of my deals that I stole from Kelly Lee is drive for five, and I try to ingrain that into my players, that if you're driving for 5 seconds, there's no way that guy that you're assigned to is making the tackle. And if the kids know, we watch in film, and I said, "What's wrong with this?" "Yeah, I don't drive for five, coach. Here, he gets off the block." "Yeah." So you get that ingrained in their kids. You drive for five. Yeah. Down blocks. What's the biggest hardest problem whenever you run a down block? I mean, your gap down is whenever they penetrate and they beat you inside. Well, whenever I stole another thing from him is bite the belt buckle. That means you got to have your head in front. You got to have your head in front, or you're not gonna stop the penetration. And so yeah, you steal a bunch of stuff from him. You know, down blocks. I'm a big believer in is you're not going to down block anybody unless you get that first step in the ground and you're coming down that 45. And if you're not doing that, and I stole that from him, and I stole that a drill from his old offensive line coach, and that's one of the drills you probably saw
Yeah.
in on Twitter that got blown up is I had 8,500 views just watching a down block, a simple down block running down boards. But there was a big old conversation on there, about, well, you're going to get beat over the top. Well, we don't really care, because if you're gonna beat us over the top, then we're gonna run another play, and you're gonna have a hard time beating us. So some things I stole some things that you can use in the spread, and when I first got there, they spread guys, they don't really like to block with the pad level that I have enjoyed, when blocking the wing tee or in the flex bone. And they want to block if they're at Alabama. If I had 6'8", 355-pound guys that could do jump rope with any little girls in New York City, then yeah, I would be able to block that way. But we can't. We don't have the luxury of having those big old dudes. So yeah, we run the spread, but we got to have some pad level. We've got to play lower, because if we don't, we're going to get blown up. We're not huge on the offensive line. So yeah, when I got there, they all wanted to stand up and block with their hands, and I said, guys, we're not big enough to do that. We're not big enough and strong enough to do that. And this is the first time at this school where they've had our quarterback ran for 1,000 yards, and our running back ran for 1,500. And so that's the first time they ever did. And the guy who does our film at Pioneer is like, "Hey, Eddie," told Eddie, I said, "Eddie, that you ran the ball 40 times." He goes, "That's never happened in your career there at Pioneer." And it says, "Well, it has something to do with our offensive line coming off the ball, and we got a pretty good little running back. I mean, our running back is 5'11", 192 pounds, and he's a good looking athlete. He's strong, power clean 280 as a freshman, and so I knew we had him in the backfield, so we had to come off the ball and make some things happen, and I think I brought some things that I learned from Kelly in that flexbone world to the spread, and we got after it. I think our offensive line played not perfect, but we played pretty good and got better, and the kids started listening to us, and we did okay running the football, and that helped us close out games. I know our defensive coaches were happy that we could run the ball a little better and kill some of that clock. And so yeah, if you say that I took some things from the flex to spread, absolutely I did, and so, but yeah, I think I did.
Not perfect, coach. Like it's. I mean, yeah. I think there's to your point. Like the pad level's a little different, and especially a lot of times, I think flexbone teams typically have smaller linemen in part because they want kids that can move. I think that's part.
Right.
Their part of it is, let's be honest, most of the schools that run the flexbone are typically historically not the best school in that league. Not historically, as that always true now. But I mean, like I said, so you got to adapt to your personnel and do a good job. Now with that, like from a flex bone drill wise, or option drill wise, however you want to word it, wing T option, the under center, where the physicalness. Where like obviously watched your clinic and I've talked to Kelly a lot, but where do you kind of start day one, especially especially with a group that you've not had before?
Okay, it happened this year, and they didn't have spring football, and I had to finish my contract over there in June, and I had to go all the way to like June 10th. So my first day with the kids, in Texas they give us that 1 hour of a day in the summer, so we can work sports specific, so we can have the pads on there. We can't have sleds or we can't have helmets or other. So basically my first till 4th of July I was there every day for an hour, and we rarely got together with the receivers, but I was talking about our pad level, and I had the pads out there, and I was hitting the pads, and we're kicking out on our counters, and I'm a big believer of you've got to understand attacking the line of scrimmage on your counters. It's just like running a belly. If you're coming down the line of scrimmage, you're going to get beat. You've got to attack the line of scrimmage when you're coming down. I pulled the boards out there, I pulled the cage out there, and I'm working it, from the get go. And now we're working, our zone drills because we run zone right, zone left. And another thing is that I wanted to mention as I started, you got me talking about this, is I actually took some pod work that I learned with Coach Lee to our counter. And because we run a counter with Kelly, and we actually work it where I work a drill, a half line, where I'm working with a center and the guard and the tackle. Center blocks back on a pad, the guard will kick, and the tackle will seal. So sometimes they squeeze, and we got to log him. The tackle's got to be around. And so we would pod our counter for 2 periods a week. And that they had never done that before. They're not done it before. The coach, I told him, I said, we want to get better at counter. Let's pod it up, and we did, and we potted it up, and we go right and left, and we did that for 2 periods, and then we went with our power drill, where when you work in the flex mode, you don't care what people run, because you work against everything. You work against a shade, a one, two, or three. It doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to them. It doesn't care, because you're going to rep it every time in that pod, because you're getting reps and reps and reps and reps. Well, I told him, I said, let's do that with our power. And what we would do with our power is we ran a pod, but I would put all the defenses that you could run against us, and now they've got to face it. They've got to see it, and we do it in a fast pace. And I do it with my varsity, my JV, my varsity A, my varsity B, my JV A, and my JV B. They're all getting reps. If the first guy's going, the last guys are holding the shields, and they switch out and they run, and we go speed, 5 seconds. And now they know, and then we change the defense. And we potted up where all those kids are getting reps and reps. And in 4 periods, we've worked every defense that you can run against us and counter. We've worked every defense that we can run in on our power, and we get those 2 knocked out in 4 periods a week. And it worked out real good for us. And of course, that's what I learned from the Flexbone. And you know, we had 2 1,000-yard rushers. We never had that at the school. That's the first time they've ever had it. And so and we were district champs, and we're the number 1 seed, and we ran the ball at people, and we had some success in it. And so, yeah, there's some other things that I took from him. Is that Flexbone world is potting out some of our offensive run game, and that worked out real good for us, and we were successful with that.
Okay. Now with that, like, I'm always curious because, like I said, I've talked to over the past couple weeks wishbone guys, split back veer guys. I've talked to an obscene amount of Flexbone guys over the years, and you've kind of talked to the Harding people, helped camps, you've coached in the slot tee, the wing tee, the Flexbone. What parts do you think, like, I'm gonna word it this way, details that might get missed O-line wise, especially by newer option guys? I'll word it that way. What details do you think might get overlooked? It could be a specific play in general. Like, what details do you think maybe get overlooked?
Let's see, details. Okay. You know, I'm a big believer in, if you talk about the Flexbone, what I love is if you've ever been around Kevin Chisholm, and if you really watch his line, I mean, everybody wants to watch the quarterback and the fullback, but if you really watch his offensive line, how they can get up to second level without losing their vertical path, and is amazing to me, is because they get up on second level, and it's, you know, I talked to our linebackers that are on our defense, and when I was there working with it, and they said that it's just like a minefield. Playing linebacker, going against the Flexbone is like a minefield, because they feel like they've beat one lineman, and now the next lineman is blowing him up. But if you don't blow him up, now you're running the arc of the slot, and now the slot, they beat the tackle. They thought and now the slots sealed them inside. Now they pitched the ball outside. And so I talked to them. I would say that the young offensive line coaches, especially in the Flexbone, is if you can really teach that veer drill and do it right, where you have that pigeon toe. If you listen to Kevin and you listen to his videos, that pigeon toe, that hand trade, getting vertical up on linebackers, because that's the key. Is the down lineman, we're going to read one and option 2 and block number 3, and if we can take care of that linebacker, that inside linebacker, because you're getting vertical, and you block that inside linebacker with your tackle, and your slot can climb to safety. I mean, you're one-on-one blocking with a corner. You know, yeah, that's what you're doing. Is I mean, it's math. Is my 10 guys are going to block your 9 guys, because I'm not going to block 2 of them. I'm not going to block 2 of them. I'm going to read one of them. I'm going to option the second one. I'm going to block your third one. And so if you can teach your guys to get up on that second level and wall those guys off, that vertical veer, because it's not easy to teach. I mean, you saw my Twitter videos, is you got to teach that vertical veer to get on those linebackers and not let them crush you down. And then that linebacker can climb over the top, and now you don't have an angle to get to that safety. And I would say that is you're working your vertical veers to get up on linebackers. Have a toolbox. You know, let's say you can't get there on a veer, then you're going to loop, what we call as a loop, and you're going to take the outside path. We're still going to read that guy. It's going to be a quicker read by the quarterback, but you're still going to loop, and now you can load that inside linebacker and wall him off, and you're still getting the same numbers on your outside. So if I would have, I would tell a young offensive line coach is spend time working on your vertical veers, getting up on linebackers, your double teams, you know, double the trouble. Is if you've ever listened to Kelly, you know, he's talking about double the trouble. You know, those guys on defense get coached too, you know, and they try to split you. They try to give you that side shoulder. Well, you get shoulder to shoulder, butt to butt, and you're into their legs, and you're using an outside flipper, and you're double teaming that guy. And you're not coming off the ground. You're not coming off the ground more than 2.5 feet off the ground. And you practice it. Brownsville vets. The last year I was there with him, and this year when they made it to the semis, their center's 5'8", 160 pounds, and he's playing in the semifinals at center. That's that don't tell me you can't teach a kid to play with technique and play at a high level if you teach him technique, and the kid's got to be willing to work on his technique. He's got to have that desire to do well, and you can make those kids. Don't have a picture where this is the kind of offensive line I want to have. If you can take a kid that has desire and wants to learn technique, and even if he's not big enough, don't just frame, you're not big enough. Well, take some of those kids that don't have all the intangibles that colleges want, but you can make high school kids play at a high level if you just find them and work them, and they'll get after it. And it's funny how those kids, usually have more desire than the big kids. They have more desire to play because they got more to prove, and they get after it. And I would say, find those kids that have that desire that want to do it, and you find a way to get them coached if you work hard enough at it. Young offensive line coaches, find a guy that you can learn from and steal from him, because I think every good coach is a thief. I stole everything from Kevin Chisholm, and I learned anything I could from Coach Lee and Bruce Bush. How to evaluate running backs. When I first got to Pioneer, and we got a running back there, and it was just a freshman when I first got there, and he's a sophomore. That's that kid that ran for 1,400 yards this year, and he has all the intangibles, and you find those kids, and just you don't have to have the perfect bodies to coach them. If they've got desire, you can make them happen.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And like I said, I think that's I don't know if that's the MO of under some of the under center wing T Flexbone teams, is that they have undersized kids that are just going to grind really hard and work really hard and do what you need them to do, and they find a way to get done. We joke around here. I mean, they're a spread team now, but they were a long time wing T team, typically new high school. They had, like all their offensive linemen are 5'8", like 185, and they've been in the state semifinals the past years because their kids just are extremely coachable, work really hard, and do what they're coached. That's the nomenclature of a good offensive lineman. Now, I have a question, because you obviously Flexbone and option teams don't pull as much as, say, a normal gap scheme team. I'll phrase it that way. It's a little different. And I think spread teams are starting to pull more because they realize not everybody can run inside zone. So counters become a lot more, kind of like you've mentioned, you guys ran a lot of counter this year. Counter has become kind of the it play for spread teams. How do you, for your Flexbone teams, how do you teach counter? I mean, not counter, your pulls, because obviously there's 18 different ways to pull at this point. Shuffle pulling, skip pulling, open pulling, check pull. How do you, when you try to run trap or your counter, how are you teaching the pulls to your guards?
Okay, let's start with the trap. Let's say we're going to run a trap. Let's start with the guard or the tackle. What I want to tell them to do is I want you to replace the ball. And so my center is going to block backside. I'm going to take a clear step, and now I want to climb the line of scrimmage, and I want to replace that ball. I want my midline from my midline. I'm going to say that midline. I all my offensive linemen that are watching this, I have a different way of explaining that to them, but I'm not going to do it here. Is replace that ball. You want to replace that ball, and you want to run over where that ball is. Okay, that's a trap pull. Tackles, I want the same angle. I want them to take a clear step, and then I want them to climb the line of scrimmage, and I want them to replace that ball, because we're going to trap the first man on or past the center. Okay, So that's what we want to do. And if I can get up the field, I don't care about if they penetrate, because I can always be late with my hands. Okay. So that's a trap pull. Okay. If I'm running belly or I'm running counter, I teach them the same way, because I'm gonna tell you why. It comes from two different areas, but my counter and my belly, I teach them the same way. I teach vertical alignment. What I mean by vertical alignment is the helmet of my center, and the back, his belt loop is where my guards are. My guards' helmets are at the belt loop of my center. And what I want them to do is, why I want to do that is because whenever I pull, I don't want to get into that mesh, into that problem. And it's hard for my quarterbacks to figure it out, because we gotta have that vertical alignment to get there. So if my helmet's at the belt loop of that center, I want to take a clear step, because that center's got a black back for me. If it's a 1, 3, or a 4-eye, I don't care. And I'm gonna tell you that people tell you, well, you can't black back on a 3-eye, 3 technique. You can't? Okay. That means you're not practicing hard enough. You can get it done. And if that little 5'6", 165-pound center can do it, my guy my guy that I had this year was 6'1", 265, and he did it as well. Is you got to come flat down the line of scrimmage, and that center's got to come flat down the line of scrimmage, and he's got to look for disaster. What is disaster? If it's penetration, that's the first thing he's got to look for. Danger is if he tries to beat you over the top of the head. And what we're going to do is, that first step is got to be, you've got to come flat. That first step for that center's got to be flat, because that's the disaster step. Okay. If that guy's penetrating, if he's come upfield, then you've got to get across and get your helmet on his belt buckle, above his belt buckle, and try to cut him above his waist, because in now Texas you can't cut below the waist unless it's at the point of attack. We want to try to cut him above his belt buckle, and then fall into his legs. Some people call that illegal. I call it, if you run it driving 65 and the speed limit 65, it's still legal. If you can start penetration, if you can make that contact above the belt loop and then follow the legs, if your first contact's above the waist, that's legal. And I'll debate any official in America, let them know. And Army is the one that came up with this. They called it belt loop to shoelaces. If you make that contact with the belt loop and then you can fall down the shoelaces, that's still legal. Okay. So now let's get back to the pull. Okay. My counter and my belly steps are the same. I want to take a clear step. And if you listen to this clear step, this goes back to my days learning the wing tee and working offensive line from Mel Tenniper at Nebraska, when Nebraska was killing everybody. Okay, Mel Tenniper was the #1 offensive line coach back in Nebraska's heyday. And if you really watch him, his rip, reach, pull, and overtake stuff that I've stolen from him, I've taught forever, is I want a clear step, because that center, who's blocking back for me, is going to block that way, and you got to have that clear step, because he's got to have that first step to get through there. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to climb with that second step. We want to climb towards the line of scrimmage, and then we're going to clear climb, and we're going to fan block, because we're attacking that line of scrimmage. That guy can't beat us inside. Now, sometimes they do. And now what we're going to do is what I like to call the wrong shoulder. If they squeezed hard enough, now you're going to make contact with that inside shoulder, but your path hasn't changed. Your path hasn't changed. He's squeezed. Now I'm going to hit him with my inside shoulder pad, and the physics. If you're coming down with full speed and you're coming as hard as you can, and you're moving as fast as you can, and you hit with your inside shoulder pad, you're automatically going to log that guy. It's just physics. It's when two items hit each other, and you have that angle, you're going to be able to log that person. And I'm a believer in it. Is you hit them with the inside shoulder pad, and you automatically log. And now I teach the tackle. Well, I couldn't see what's going on. Well, then you're too close. Get your splits a little wider. So now you can see what's going on. As you pull, I want to be on the hip of the hip closest to your goal line. I want to be on his hip so I can read. If I am logging him, if he's going to log him, then I'm going to be outside of him, because there's no lane for me to get into. Now, if he's able to kick out, and you see now he's beat him, he's climbed the line of scrimmage, he's kicked him out with his outside shoulder pad. Now I can see that there's going to be a gap inside where I can get inside of it. And that comes back to the drill that I learned from Kelly, is that half line drill on counter. And so now my kids, I give them a look. Okay, you're going to see him climb the line of scrimmage. Okay, we're going to kick him out, and the tackle's inside, finding that outside linebacker, inside linebacker. Okay, well, now they squeeze. Well, now I squeeze, and now my tackle is going to be around looking for that linebacker. So they run it. They run it drill after drill. Boom. I go right side, left side, right side, left side. In that 10 minutes, they get probably 30 reps of that. And I actually put the running backs in there as well with them. I do this pre-practice with just the linemen. And then when we go to our periods, our running backs are seeing it. So now they're seeing it. They're getting behind that tackle when he has to get around, or he's filling in. He's getting into that gap, so that running back can read behind him and he can see it. So we get all of those guys involved in those reps. That helps the running back see where the hole is and understand what they're doing. And so whenever they get to the game, it's in slow motion because they've repped it. Okay, so that's my counter or my belly. Belly, I'm teaching the same thing. Now, what if they're penetrating and trying to come over the top and trying to make the tackle? Well, what I learned as well, it doesn't, my path, and this is, you talked about young offensive line coaches, teach them this, is you stay on your path. Stay on your path no matter what. You clear, climb, fan, and trying to attack that line of scrimmage. If he penetrates too much up the field, you can always be late with your hands, because all you got to do is get a piece of him with your hands. That back is going to be able to get inside because he's penetrated too far up the field. And I'm a big believer in that. And because what's the number one thing that offensive linemen do? If that defensive end comes up the field and he changes his path, what does the defensive end do? He jumps back inside and makes a tackle, makes you look silly. Well, if you attack that line of scrimmage, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that right. So now if he tries to get back inside, you're going to kick him out. If he tries to come up the field, you can be late with your hands. You can always be late with your hands. So I tell that to belly and my counter, that I never change that and I never deviate from that. Clear, climb, fan. Clear the center's block back for you, climb the line of scrimmage, and then fan block when you try to kick out. Okay, power. Power is all skip pull. And I teach the skip pull this summer. We teach the skip pull. Want to keep our shoulders aligned to the line of scrimmage, because we're going to try to identify that one linebacker. Our running backs had a real good job, and I wish I could take credit for it. But when you have talented kids in the backfield, they just make you look good. I've had running backs that are not as talented. God bless their soul. But when you have a guy that back there that makes you look good no matter what, but if he can follow that lineman and he has his shoulder square and he can get up on that linebacker, and that same rule I tell you about on the skip pull is when I teach the drill is I do 2 whistles. The first whistle starts the drill. Second whistle, they get on that, they find that linebacker, they hit him, and now I drive for 5. I blow that whistle after 5 seconds. I'll even count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and blow the whistle. They get used to that 5 seconds. If I stay with my block for 5 seconds, that running back's going to be through the hole. And the running backs will come over sometimes in pre-practice and get with our linemen. And when they work their skip pull, we'll have a guy that steps up in there in A gap or B gap, and we take him which way, and the back's got to come off of that block. But we teach the skip pull. I skip pull the power, and the counter is I trap what I call a trap pull, and I call them those 2 things. The trap is a little different because it's a little more up the field. I want to get a little more upfield because it happens with an inside defensive tackle. So I don't know if I explained it as well to you, but that's how we do it.
Perfect, Coach. That's great detail. Like I said, I love podcasts where I can just literally ask a question and I get a 20-minute answer. That's perfect. That means I've done my good job at picking good guests. Now I got 2 questions left for you before we go. One, I don't know if you could talk about it because there's rules. Because I know you spent some time in the slot T, and I know how those people react to certain things when you say anything. I may not currently live in Texas, but I am well aware of the mafia, as we call them. But I know you have some good stories. Is there anything you could say on your time on the slot T? Like
I
obviously,
got a couple of things.
okay.
Okay, I'm gonna teach you. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this is the 10 Commandments of the slot T. Thou shalt have only one offense and no other offense before the slot T. Number 2, thou shalt run the offense the way it was passed down from your ancestor, Rabbi Bush. Anyone who runs it differently shall be shunned by the true slot T family. Number 3, thou shalt have offensive linemen in 4-point stances and flip for strength. A 200 series play cannot be run the first play of the scrimmage because it's on 2, and your lineman will jump off sides. Number 5, thou shalt attempt 18 passes per game. 16 of those will be during pregame warmups. 'Rule number 6, peanut must be run to thine sideline and by every sub-varsity team at least once a game. Thou shalt not covet spread offenses and their versatility and statistics. Thou shalt never take a snap in the shotgun. Thou shalt pick the smallest and fastest back to run 8-hole reverse and 3-2-8. And thou shalt not share the secrets of the slot T system with anyone not in the faith. So those are the 10 commandments of the slot T. Yeah, I put that on Facebook whenever Bruce Bush retired, and I think there was 550 comments.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just nuts how that came out. Okay, I told you about this story. I'm going to share it with everybody. Is the first year I left PSG Memorial. I was the offensive coordinator there for 7 years. That was the longest place I've ever been. I was there for 9. The guy that I was working for was a wing T guy. Learned it from West Texas, and he became the AD at Mission. And I applied for the head coaching job, and in their brilliance, they didn't hire me. But I went to go work for Bruce Bush, and so I got hired with him the week before spring break, and so I was with him for the rest of that year. We went through spring ball, and Bruce Bush spring trainings he says 18 practices in 31 days. He don't need 31 days. Man, we would go Thursday, Friday, Monday through Saturday, Monday through like Friday, and we're done. I mean, he grinded off of spring ball. These guys that do spring ball Monday, Tuesday, we're gonna take Wednesday off, and they're gonna go back out Thursday, and then all right, see y'all next week. No, Bruce we would grind his team in 3 weeks to get it done. And well, anyway, so I'm with her with the spring ball, and then summer comes, and we had the weight room. This is before we had sports specific. And he says, "Okay, boys, we're going to coaching school. Well, the slot T meeting is going to be at Texas State." I was like, "Okay," and I'm thinking, it's probably going to be, 8 or 10 guys there or whatever. So we go there, and we're at Texas State. Bruce's son is working there. The guy that's the head coach at UTRGV now. His son Travis was at Texas State at that time, and he gave us the big meeting room there, and it's packed. I mean, I was like, I walked in there being the other offensive line coach, walked in there, and we were like, dude, we're gonna learn some slot T today, man. So I brought my notebook, and when Bruce gets up there, he's talking to everybody. Okay, anybody want to share anything? Well, silence. Nobody wants to share nothing. Like nobody wants to share nothing. And we're like, of course, if I'm sitting in the crowd and it's Bruce Bush up there talking, I mean, I probably wouldn't want to share anything because I want to look stupid. Well, so I'm sitting here thinking like, I got my notebook. I'm ready to write some stuff up and learn some from these guys that have been running it forever, And Bruce says, okay, well, we're going to break up. We'll have you group go over here with Coach Duty, and we're going to learn. He's going to teach you 8-hole reverse, and you go over here with Louie. He's going to teach you 3-2-8, and then you guys can switch. And I was like, I looked at Louie. I said, we came here to learn, man. We didn't come here to teach. And there I am teaching guys that have been running this forever. I'm teaching them. I'm drawing up 8-hole reverse, and just like I'm telling you how we're gonna. Back then we could cut. I mean, we were nasty. I had guards back then that were like lawnmowers, man. And I'm gonna tell you something. A drill that we used to do, and nobody can do it anymore because nobody can cut. But I'm not gonna lie to you, man. We get in that cage, and 7.5 minutes, they'd be over there with a sled, and 7.5 minutes they were in the cage, and we'd run sweep drill all day long, and I'd have those guys cut those stand up dummies and those red balls and kicking them out, and we were nasty. I mean, those guards would get out there and they would just cut. I mean, the first thing they hit the ground was their helmet, and you could see their cleats up in the air 6 feet. They'd cut them, and this is back in the day when we could cut, and you teach that backside tackle across the field and go find that safety, and he cut him as well. Just be nasty. Um, whenever you work for Bruce, whenever you're running, Bruce did pods before they were pods, but he did team pods because it was pretty simple the way he ran it. He ran the first 15 minutes of practice was ICBNT, isometric blocking and tackling. Everybody on the team, every assistant coach there was coaching blocking, base block, down block. I'm talking about quarterbacks, receivers, everybody. Everybody taught basic blocking. Everybody taught basic tackling. I'm the offensive line coach, and I'm coaching my offensive line guys, and I'm teaching tackling to them. We did that for 15 minutes, 3 periods a day, and then we do trap drill, sweep drill, pass drill, and then they go to defense. We get the JV and do the same thing with them, and then we get back and run team for 20 minutes at the end. But whenever we ran drills, we had three pop-up dummies, and we wear those out because you had to drag them off the field so they can mow the grass, and everybody was assigned. If you were going downfield, you had to go and you had to get off your feet and cut that dummy every drill, every play, and we drill that, and if you blew the whistle and that somebody wasn't on their feet, that play didn't happen, and we'd have to run it again. And they'd get pissed off and say, okay, so you had to be running, and you're downfield. You're gonna don't let your guy cross your face, and you're hauling butt downfield and cutting one of those pop-up dummies. And that slot T, we played it in the first round, the second round this year. We played against Liberty Hill, and they're pretty good at running it, and they're a pretty disciplined football team, and our defense, we had a hard time stopping them, but they weren't the only ones. Everybody that they played until they got to I think the semifinals, they lost this year, but they were pretty damn good at it, and it is a disciplined offense, and it's not easy to coach because there's a lot of rules to it and a lot of discipline to it, but it is effective when you can get kids to buy into it and run it. It's tough. It's tough, the misdirection that they run, and you got to have a quarterback that can deal the cards, and if they run it right, it's hard to pinpoint what they do because they do it such a good way. And Liberty Hill, I mean, they run to the line of scrimmage, get set, and they run that play, and you can't even see, is that back a little deeper than where he's trying to run 8 over, is the halfback a little deeper, he's trying to run 349. It's tough to read. I mean, even guys that have been experienced with me, as me, it's hard to look at because they run it so fast and they run it so disciplined, and they do a real good job.
Well, I think,
but go ahead.
I've never coached in it or coached against it, but like when you watch it on YouTube or watch a video, like they get to the line so quick. So even if you can tell what they're in, like you don't have time to adjust. There's not a chance in hell you're adjusting. Like it's just so, like, I mean, by the time from breaking the huddle to snapping the ball, it's like less than 6 seconds. But you're not getting it ain't happening.
I worked with a head coach that was a defensive coordinator guy, and he's now he was the offensive coordinator at Veterans this past year, Mike Evans, and he told me that for him to properly defend him, he was watching huddle mechanics, because what he would do is he would watch if that tackle was bumping over to the other side in the huddle, because he knew that if that tackle was moving over, it was tackle over. And so because they knew that they were coming to the line and getting set so fast, he had to break down huddle mechanics to give his kids a chance to understand, hey, you're running tackle over to your side. And so that's an interesting thing. Talking to someone outside of the slot T mafia, how they're going to defend it, and the huddle mechanics of figuring out how they're breaking the huddles tells you, if that slot is coming over to this side, that means they're running the double slot, or they're running the slot, wide, trying to get that corner back out of the way. So now they can run the sweep at you without that corner coming in at force. So someone you're listening to someone that's outside the slot team mafia, how to defend it. You got to break down their huddle mechanics, because if you wait for them to come to the line, you're going to be too late. So it was interesting to be on the other side with that, with Mike.
Now, the last question I have for you, because you mentioned it when we were talking before, and you played in college in a split back veer. What would you say the biggest differences between the split back veer is to other option teams?
Okay. The split back veer that I ran in college was simplistic. I mean, it was just 88 to the hole. And so would I be able to tell you that we had a great scheme? No, we didn't. And even I ran the wishbone in high school. We had three big running backs. We ran the wishbone, and it was just 88 to the hole. Coaching from, I don't want to sell out my high school coaches nor my college coaches. The detail that we coach now as compared to what they coached in the 80s, it's night and day. I mean, what we got coached to do in the 80s to how I coach now is completely different. I mean, it is so much more detailed. When I talk to my kids and when I rep my kids, when we played football, we played football and we went out and played spring ball, but we didn't run very much offense before spring football. It was just 88 to the hole, as everybody zoned to the hole, and everybody just climbed line, whatever in front of you, block in front of it. And now is okay. You're going to veer a 5. You're going to veer underneath a 4. You're going to loop a 4-eye, and those weren't things back when I played. Did we have talented running backs that made us look good? Yeah. And did we block people up off the ball? Yeah. But the detail that the coaches coach now, as compared to back when I played, is just night and day. And I hate to say that. I hate to throw my coaches under the bus, but we coach at a much more technical level than whenever I got coached in high school. And that's just the truth. And I think anybody that you ask that played in that era will tell you the same thing.
Okay. Just curious. Well, coaches, give the man a follow on Twitter. Like I said, he'll post drills. He's all over there. And obviously, if you have questions for the man, get a hold of him. Like, he got back to me pretty quickly. But he literally has, as you can tell, he has been involved in some form or facet in virtually every offense ever created. Wishbone, split back veer, slot T, flexbone, wing T, spread.
Yeah.
Is there anything left? I don't. A single wing is probably the only thing left that you have. That sounds like off the top of my head.
Single wing, probably. Yeah.
That's. So yeah. So obviously give Coach a follow. This will probably just blow up just because I'll put slot T in the title along with the flexbone stuff, and I'll probably get several comments and but whatever. But yeah. So give Coach a follow. It's the least you can do. If you have questions for him, like I said, he's spent a lot of time on the flexbone. Reach out to him. I know he's got a good clinic out there as well. He's done that for a line. I've watched it. It's pretty good. I was actually watching it while I was waiting on my wife's surgery to get done the other day. Just sitting there and taking notes and sending stuff out to people. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. And otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.